Hello. On today's video, we're going to be talking about weaponized incompetence versus the selfish negligence video that I made about 12 hours ago. That's getting significantly more attention than I was expecting it to. I'm going to show you the video first. I'm going to share with you some of the things that I missed from that video, some of the other sentiments around the video, some of the purpose for why I made it in the first place, and then a couple of my reactions to a couple of the comments that showed up in there. Couple that certainly hurt my feelings, but also wanting to offer a response to a couple of those things. So first we'll start with, here's the video in question. I personally think that the term weaponized incompetence is overused. What Rob displays in these videos, in my opinion, is something a little different. Weaponized incompetence to me is super manipulative, purposeful, and has intention to it. When I think about weaponized incompetence, I'm thinking about like murder. Premeditated, clear motive, purposeful. When I see these things, I think much more of involuntary manslaughter. For example, drunk driving. Pretty sure no drunk driver gets on the road planning to hurt anybody. They are, however, being super selfish. It's what I call this is selfish negligence. It's selfish, it lacks thought, it does not consider the impact to other people, but it's not necessarily intentional. It might disregard expectations or conversations that have been had before. And in my opinion, the intention is not to hurt the other person. It is simply selfish. That's my take on it. The reason I think it's important saying something about this is that when I hear the word weaponized incompetence, it sounds super purposeful. If I'm being accused, and I think a lot of guys being accused of weaponized incompetence, I know for sure there's a lot more of them getting more defensive because that word is being used, and I don't think it's moving the conversation forward for a lot of people. If Alyssa said, I think you're weaponizing incompetence against me, versus I think you're being negligently selfish. The second one feels more accurate, and I know that I'm going to get less defensive, especially if I know that I was not purposefully doing something. So let's start with, where did I miss? I think I made a mistake of thinking, oh, I talk about these kind of behaviors every single day. I'm making the past 6 months, one video a day, and almost every single day I am talking about these things. And so sometimes I forget when I make a 90-second or 2-minute video there, I forget that not everybody is seeing all of the other things that I'm talking about on a consistent basis. And so they're getting that 90 seconds of me rather than the other bunches of 90 seconds of me. So in that, I forget that I'm very much on the side of a lot of the women that are dealing with these behaviors. So using the rest of the Brita, not filling it up, that is absolutely putting more domestic labor, more mental load, more emotional labor on typically the woman in the house or the person that is doing that added labor. That is something that I don't condone. That is what I am consistently training men to not do, to be more considerate, to own the mental load, to pick up after themselves, and to not cause that like unnecessary, often harm to their partners. And sometimes I forget that I missed that. So I apologize. I did not mean to, I'm not meaning to straight up defend men that are doing this and saying that we're being too harsh on them. I do think that selfish negligence is not a fun word to receive either. You're being selfishly negligent. It is arguably more accurate and probably a little bit more palatable. And I'm hoping that it creates more constructive conversations out there. Either way, I don't condone the behavior, and I think I made the mistake of allowing people to think that I might condone the behavior. So I apologize to the people that feel like I'm condoning the behavior and might have missed that aspect of that. I make videos about that every single day. So I apologize for that. What I think inspired the video up front was I saw the video. I saw the caption of point of view of a roommate or a partner that weaponizes incompetence. And my goal, right, as a coach for men, as a coach for, I often work with couples, often what men need at first is just an improved vision and awareness of the invisible labor that shows up in and around them all the time. Having said that, what they often need after that is a better constructive space for conversations about emotions with their partner. And so that often turns into a lot of the coaching that I'm doing with couples is I'm helping them articulate their emotions. So there's a lot of moments where anger is going to come out. It's going to be secondhand anger that is underneath that anger is hurt and loneliness and sadness. And those are tons of the conversations that I'm having with people every day, is oftentimes helping men, helping women articulate those emotions with their partner. What I often also see is that when we're using language that triggers each other, I know that I was talking about ideally we're using words that trigger and or cause less defensiveness. I'm rooting for relationships. I'm rooting for more constructive conversation, because that is how I do my job, is help people improve their relationships. So from there, once we can work on, that behavior up front, then improving the conversations that we're having. So I recognize that this video is probably speaking much more to people that are already starting to do the work, where men are starting to lean in. And I'm consistently working on improving my palatability, improving my ability to be heard by men, rather than men being like, fuck that guy, I'm out, I'm done, I don't want to see his face again, I'm annoyed by his existence. So a huge part of my goal is to be in men's faces in a palatable way. And so I know that this word is often being overused and doesn't allow me to get to speak to them, because any of the Instagram content that is being sent their way is often not a very effective Trojan horse. What I often aim to be is a person that is giving them really educational pieces that they can see themselves in, they can be self-reflective, in a weaponized incompetence, starting a lot of crappy conversations that I don't think are turning constructive. So that's some of the nuanced background of where I'm coming from with this, is that I want to see better conversations happening. So having said that, I'm very open to more conversation about this and a better metaphor. And I think when we look at sentencing, right, in the prison, in the law system, we often are looking at intent of things and what the punishment is due for that. So when someone dies, and the route to them dying was a very purposeful, intentional thing, versus the other side when it was not intentional, but it was certainly selfish and negligent, the sentencing is typically different, and we decide whether they're a danger to have on our streets or not. Now, also, if someone is caught drunk driving multiple times and or they've offended before, they're going to lose their license, aka in the metaphor here, right? If there's someone that is consistently doing this and they're unwilling to change their behavior, that's divorce, that's separation, right? So that is totally an appropriate way to look at it, is long-term. If they're not making change, if they're still doing those things, then that is going to lead to broken trust and long-term no trust, loneliness, leading to separation and divorce. Yes, long-term, I think what I'm responding to here, I'm going to come to one of the comments. So whether it's intentional or not, once feedback is given on how these behaviors impact the peace of others in the home, and it continues, it is a choice to neglect learning, effort, and consideration, a choice to take energy and goodwill from others, a choice to live in a more chaotic and dysfunctional home. I agree with this. Similar to the way that sentencing works, a repeat drunk driving offender, especially someone that has hurt people before, is going to be treated differently than somebody on their first time. So I think a lot of people are seeing this person with the Brita filter and they're thinking, wow, this guy's probably already heard it a bunch of times. I know in my house, I'm seeing things like this. They've heard it a bunch of times. And so talking to that person as a repeat offender that consistently does this is very different than someone that's doing it for the first time. Now from there, I still think it's worthwhile considering the language that we use, depending on where we're trying to go. If we're trying to hurt back the person that is doing the harming, if we're trying to hurt the person and communicate to them the hurt that they're causing and that they should be shameful, then probably use weaponized incompetence. You're weaponizing your incompetence. You're doing this on purpose. Now, Alyssa and I were talking about this video earlier today. We were saying, I think what weaponized incompetence, the way I see it and the way I use the definition, might be if they were putting milk in the Brita filter. Oh, I just can't use the Brita filter. Or if they were overfilling it to the point where they were creating a mess of water, or they put in the filter wrong and the water wasn't actually getting filtered, such that the person was like, you know what, don't even bother doing it. Just don't even bother. I got it. And so they've effectively manipulated that person into thinking they're not capable of doing it. And so they're being asked to not do it. That's weaponized incompetence to me. Similarly, I had given an example when I was talking to my wife earlier. Weaponized incompetence to me is if I were to sweep the floor in a purposefully imperfect way where I'm saying that I did the sweep job, she's going to see it and be like, what the hell, he didn't sweep it. And then I'm throwing up my arms and saying, oh my God, I just can't get it right. I guess I just can't do it. I saw the same creator made a similar video they're talking about laundry and how I'm like, oh, I can't do that. There's too many buttons on there. I could never. It's fine. You'll just have to do it. That occurs to me as weaponized incompetence. That is manipulative, is really terrible. And selfish negligence is something that probably happens on a more frequent basis. It's less calculated, and it's certainly negligent. And I think people's marriages whittle away and disintegrate over time from similar actions in that they're doing a lot of the same stuff. The intention's very different. Is they're being selfish. They're walking around with their male privilege. I know that I've walked around with a lot of my male privilege, not seeing the impacts of the other people and not trusting and or believing in the emotions that the other person is experiencing. I believe that the intention does matter. And at the same time, when we look at the impact of it, I think that it is having the same impact. And so I actually wasn't sure whether this comment was really agreeing or disagreeing with me, but just pointing out it kind of doesn't matter because the impact is the same. And I think over time, for sure, the impact is somewhat similar. I can't say that I've ever, not anything that I can remember, is purposefully doing something wrong so that Alyssa would think I would do it differently. Like that occurs to me as closest word I can come to is evil. Versus I'm absolutely an offender of negligent selfishness, and that is something that I've worked on, is improving my awareness, improving the way that I think and do things, improving my ability to see the mental load that I'm creating and adding for Alyssa, understanding the consideration that she puts into so much more of the work around here. I think that is a much more likely thing, and that is something that I absolutely have and have moments of continuing to do, and that is where I can continue learning. That is something that I can work so more with versus if I were weaponizing responsibility, I just shouldn't be in a relationship. Versus I see that I have moments of individualized selfish negligence, and there's a lot of moments where I can also receive feedback on that. I can hear that and be like, yes, I will do it differently another way. I want to go to this next comment, which this one certainly hurt my feelings. So I think it's wild that you steal women's content, their terms, and then try to invalidate the very premise. You're a whole problem. I can see where they feel as though I'm stealing women's content. I talk about a lot of things that I'm certainly regurgitating, a handful of things. I aim to do a lot of work to share how I'm seeing it in my own life, rather than just doing response videos, just doing straight educational things that I haven't added to, I haven't given my own flavor to. So I can see where they're coming from. It hurts that they see it that way, and then trying to invalidate the very premise. So I'm not trying to invalidate the premise of men need to do better. I totally agree with that. That is where the nuance, I think, kind of drops off. You're a whole problem. We're gonna have to agree to disagree on that one. I don't think that the 100+ relationships that I've worked with, people that I've worked with, men that I've worked with, would agree with that. And I know that someone came up to me in the library the other day and said, thank you for the free content. So I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that one. I don't think you're interested in a debate, but I can totally get where you're feeling frustrated with me. And then let's go to this one. So you're the guy that's supposed to be teaching men how to recognize and share the emotional labor burden, but then wanting to add more emotional labor to not upset the men who are doing this. Make it make sense. There's a video that I've made before that I don't make anymore for that reason. I get the DM question multiple times a week. How do I explain mental load to my husband? I don't make that video anymore, even though it is something that is consistently asked of me, because people are consistently pushing back and saying, Zach, stop giving us more emotional labor. We're already doing it. And so part of what I'm going to say here is that I think a lot of the people that I work with that sign up to work with me for my services, get coaching from me, versus the people that escape and watch my free content and get something out of it but don't do anything with it. That's sort of a difference in who I'm speaking to. So when it comes to coaching, I'm saying these things not typically on the internet. I'm encouraging using better terms. When I'm engaging with women and I'm engaging with men on the same coaching call, like I'm talking and listening to both of them and offering things to both sides so that they can hear each other emotionally. So when I think about adding more emotional labor to women, a lot of the women that I am working with, they're already doing emotional labor and they're consistently looking at better, more efficient ways to put in that emotional labor. So if you're going to have a hard conversation and you're going to talk with your partner about what's happening for them emotionally, you're already doing emotional labor. I'm trying to give you more useful tools to talk about the same thing. I give the metaphor often of when we first got this house, I had a chop saw, and that was the only kind of saw we had in the house. There are a lot of jobs that are super inefficient to try to do with a chop saw, and that was all I had. So I did a handful of jobs really inefficiently because that was all I had. And so if you're already going to do the work, I would rather you have better tools. So some people, in almost the context of this comment, almost feels like if you're not already doing the emotional labor of things and or you're not wanting to do more, you're not wanting to change the emotional labor that you're doing, then this video probably wasn't for you. And I probably should have put some sort of disclaimer in that, is that yes, this is acknowledging the emotional labor that's already being done. And so I can see where it feels like I'm adding onto the plate of someone that's doing emotional labor. The goal is to improve the tool, improve the context, improve the vocabulary that we're using so that we're having more useful conversations around weaponized incompetence, around these sort of behaviors that are eroding away at relationships. I want to help men lean into the conversation. That is half of my job, is making this free Instagram content and making content on YouTube to help people, especially men, lean into, see the issues that they're creating, see the issues that are popping up that they're doing, where they can see themselves in it. So yes, my goal is to get them less defensive, and typically it's for me to be the one taking down the defenses, often rather than the woman that's already probably been trying to do that in a lot of different ways. So my goal is to take down their defensiveness to improve relationships, because that's my job, is to coach people to improve the relationships, and I need to help men get less defensive to be able to accomplish that at all. So yes, the question is, who is the taking down the defenses being delegated to? The viewer that's implementing this in their conversations, or the person that's making the videos and trying to create some Trojan horse content to help build trust with men to improve their conversations. So that's me trying to make it make sense. I don't know if I've accomplished that, but that my goal is to get men less defensive so that I can talk to them. That's how we change. It took, I'm embarrassed to say that it took a fair amount of women trusting and or believing in me as a dad for me to come around on some of the concepts that came up in the Fair Play method. So it took a lot of moments of me hearing and seeing hard things from someone other than my wife. And similar, there are things that I've told her before that she needed to hear from someone else. There are things that my parents tried teaching me as a teenager and a young adult that took me another decade to understand because I had to hear it from someone else. And so I've gotten a little bit, I know it sucks that sometimes people need to hear something from a different person. And so I'm trying to put out that kind of educational content so that I can offer that perspective for men to be able to hear it in a different way, or just hear it from another person. And I know for me, for Alyssa, for a lot of people, not just men, I think there are plenty of women that need to hear something from a woman as well, for them to be able to hear it. I'm going to explain mental load and emotional labor and invisible labor to a woman, and she's not going to believe me when I say it, but she'll be able to hear when she hears it from a woman. I'm sure there are plenty that are going to be able to hear from me, but there are plenty of people that are just not going to be able to hear it. So I'm hoping that I've addressed it. I thought these 3 comments were a good encapsulation of a lot of the comments that I saw in there. Happy to have more nuanced conversation in here. Especially, I'm going to be talking about this in my free school community. If you want to jump in the conversation there, where I think we'll have significantly more nuance of people that are looking for change, that are trying to improve, that people are doing emotional labor on both sides of the spectrum, or at least starting that conversation around it. So I'm hoping that we can drive better conversation, because in the end, that's what is. We need more constructive conversation. We need better tools, and we need to use those better tools, especially when they're uncomfortable. So that is what I'm trying to do, is improve the conversation around it. And it's hard to do that in 90 seconds. It's hard to do that on Instagram, but you got to start the conversation somewhere. And sometimes that's the place that it gets started. So I acknowledge that I made some mistakes along the way. And I hope for people that did choose to come here, that you got a little more context for where I was coming from. Thank you. If you found this valuable, if you started seeing this, if you're one of the 500 people that shared that video, and it started a good conversation, I would love to hear. I'd love to see more people in here talking about it. But hope this is valuable. I'll look forward to seeing you soon.